Everybody. I have an expert on tonight because entertainment is a lot of fun. It's really an escape for me because I typically talk on politics, but I love to not be talking on politics all the time, particularly when something big happens. And when that happens, I have to bring the experts in. Okay. I got to bring the entertainment experts into the house because I am not an entertainment. I'm probably just like a casual watcher, just like everybody else. And so I've got Pam Entertainment on, and Pam Entertainment knows way more than I do about Diddy and about so many other things entertainment. So I'm going to let you go first about this day one in the Sean Combs trial in my hometown of New York. I'll probably be somewhere near there this week. I've got some friends rolling up into Newark tomorrow, but I want to hear your take on this very newsy day one. I was surprised. Go ahead.
Thank you. Listen, today there was more information coming out that I thought because when it left off on Friday, we were doing jury selection and that had to roll into today. So they did finished the jury selection. They sat their 12 jurors and they sat the 6 alternates. I don't really have the makeup from what I understand that there's more men on the jury than women. But I don't really have the makeup of how the jury is spread out. But once they started rolling. The prosecution went through and was talking about that there's going to be 3 instances of because let me do this really quick.
Uh-huh.
Hold on, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
So his charges is that he's got 1 count of racketeering and conspiracy. He's got 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and then he has 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. So the prosecution is basically outlining that uh, they're talking about mostly with Cassie, from what I understand, about the freak offs, night kings, nights, or whatever they call it. They're talking about that. They're talking about paying for the prostitutes. They're talking about him using his enterprise to continue and coerce her into staying with him and to doing these things. They talked about the violence. They talked about the sex. They talk about the uh, what's his name, the stripper. He said he's not an escort, he was a stripper.
Right.
So they outlined all these things that they were going to talk about, and then when they did, they hit the ball running. They first introduced us to Israel. Let me pull up my tweet real quick because I just hold on, y'all.
Uh-huh. A lot of tweeting going on. A lot of really good tweeting going on today. Very informative.
Yeah. So they pulled up Israel Flores, and he came on and he discussed that he was the assistant, because he has a title, child. He's a current Los Angeles police officer, but at that time he was the assistant director of security for the Intercontinental Hotel in Century City in Los Angeles. He testified to a lot of different things. He talked about that Cassie picked up the phone because there is a video that we saw on CNN about the whole violence thing that we saw, and everybody's pretty much seen that video. However, we learned a couple of things about police officer Flores. He testified that he saw when Cassie had picked up the hotel phone and called for some assistance. He goes up there. He sees her at when he opens the doors. He sees her. She has like a purplish color black eye. And I will note that this was which surprised me, that this was all happening like 11 o'clock to 11:30 in the morning, because the freak off happened the night before. He testifies that she had a black eye. There was a broken vase in the hallway. He was explaining to Diddy that he was going to have to pay for these charges. He says that when they went to the door, he said Cassie was following behind them because she said that she wanted her belongings. He said when he went to the door, he saw a black male inside the hotel room. He didn't talk to him. He was talking to Diddy. He had another partner with him. He said Diddy grabbed the partner's phone and he kind of just bowed him up against the wall. Um, He said that Diddy offered him money that fit between his thumb and his index finger. That he, offered him a good wad of money. Apparently, it was supposed to have been $100,000 for the video. Detective Flores said he refused it. He said he completed a report. He didn't contact the police because he said there was no victim or complainant. He said that he used his iPhone, and they said that they showed these pictures in there because not only did they have the footage, but he recorded the footage from the security camera on his iPhone. And he did it because he said his wife or his girlfriend wasn't going to believe that that happened. So he
Right.
was going to show her that video. And he had like two videos on his iPhone with that. He said that he was off for the next 2 days. And when he came back, the video was wiped clean from the servers.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so he was cross-examined, and they asked him, like, did you do the 5 W's for your investigation? He says yes. That's the who, what, when, where, how, why. He says that, you remember this stuff now, but you didn't put all this information in the report. You didn't put in the report that there was another man there was another person in the hotel room. You didn't put in the report that you kind of bowed him up. You didn't put in the report that she had a black eye. You didn't call the police. You didn't do any of these different things. So that, the defense got some little cute little points in there through there.
Right.
But again, I failed to mention before that Diddy conceded to the fact that there was violence in the relationship. And he's conceding that, saying that not only was he violent, that she was violent too, that he has a temper and he is set to go off. So
Yeah.
we go over that. We come back later, and then we had the second witness, uh, Daniel Phillips. Now, he was a stripper. Now, he is talking about an incident that happened between 2012 and 2013. Now, if anybody is not familiar with what's going on in that, because this is during the time period, or a little bit after the time period, when Kid Cudi's car is supposed to have been set on fire. So
Yep.
he comes in, and he says that he was hired by Cassie to come because he thought it was supposed to be a bachelorette party. He was a stripper. He was part of some kind of male review, and he said that he was hired. The person that his handler, I don't know exactly, because he says that he manages the review, and then he says he had a handler. Can't really figure all of that out, but he's basically saying that he went to the hotel room at the Gramercy Hotel, I think is what he said.
Mm-hmm.
Gramercy Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And when he got there, it was Cassie. She was done up and ready, and she asked him, "Was that okay?" And then he proceeded to go into quite the detail of all
Mm-hmm.
the things that they did sexually. They went quite the detail on Diddy. One of the things that was surprising to me, it wasn't surprising, but I just it was a chuckle, that he said that when he walked in, he had a bandana over his face. Only thing you saw was his eyes. He had a baseball cap on, and that he kind of sat in the corner, and he was like the director of the whole situation. He talked about how Diddy was explaining to him how he wanted things to go. The baby oil has come up in here. He talked about how he wanted more baby oil to be used. He also talked about that there was drugs being taken, drugs and alcohol and all kinds of stuff that was being presented by them. He talked about the different ways that they did certain things. He says that initially she was asking for some of this stuff, and then Diddy would orchestrate or direct how it was supposed to go. There was a lot of different things, and he said that he was paid between $700 and $6,000 per encounter. And he said that they did it at the Gramercy. They
Mm-hmm.
did it at is it the Essex Hotel?
Essex House, maybe.
Essex House, yes.
Mm-hmm.
They, uh, there was a period that there was one time that at one of Diddy's homes and one of Cassie's homes. And there was another place too that they did it. They had the encounters. He
Mm-hmm.
said that after a while, he was down with it until violence. He said that that he had heard that Diddy, well, he was in one room, they were in another room, he heard the violence. He said then he looked and he saw some of the violence. She came out and she jumped in his lap, and I guess he tried to comfort her. I guess they were
Mhm.
talking. Next thing you know, they go back into uh their they start doing it again, and
Mhm.
Diddy was in the corner watching, and all this while he was masturbating during
Mhm.
the whole section.
Mhm.
Got a lot of information from that. He will be on the stand tomorrow because they were cross-examining him. They were asking him different questions and stuff like that. But specifically, he said that he got paid, and Cassie was the one that would hand him the money, that would pay him the money. He said that Diddy was the one that was directing all of the encounters, and they did it in all these little different places. So, some of
Whew.
the ways that they were doing it was the things that were happening. Who child? I
Yeah.
mean,
I'm trying to figure out with this when we're talking about grown adults. And I think the defense addressed it at one point, the question of criminality versus doing freaky stuff that people just don't like or don't agree with or such and so. So, one person, one adult tells another adult to do something. That adult decides for whatever reason to do it over and over again. Do we have money involved in this? And it's not that the behavior is, cool and okay. It's that you wonder how the prosecution is going to argue that these things violate the law. I know they addressed that in the open.
mhm,
But this is going to be interesting because that jury is older. So several older men on the jury, which I found that selection of jurors to be quite interesting for the prosecution, because it seems to me in New York, if you want to win this type of case, what you do is you get people under the age of about 35. And I was a little surprised uh, that they were okay with several male jurors that are older
hmm,
and may in fact sit there and say, well, wait a minute, if she chose to do these things, then that's on her type thing. I think that's in play possibly, although
right,
the Southern District prosecutors have an extremely high success rate. I think it's 90% or 95%. And I also think too, with that video out there of him beating up Cassie Ventura, that is hugely problematic on so many levels, almost to the point where I think that it's almost impossible to get around, for the defense. I don't know how. You notice that they did bring it up today, like they just
mhm,
brought it. And they figured, okay, we're just gonna get this out of the way. And I thought, yeah, you're going to get it out of the way because this thing is a absolute show-stopping element that everyone has seen. So,
right,
and there's no excusing it. There's no getting around it. There's no nothing. There's no excuse he's going to be able to come up with. I don't care if you're on drugs or you were drinking or whatever. That video is terrible. It's crazy. Probably one of the worst domestic violence videos we've seen involving this type of case with a celebrity or really anybody else. Crazy video. So I think the case is almost over with that in terms of pretrial publicity. That's just me. Even though that video has nothing to do with what he is actually prosecuted for.
right.
Still,
I think that video is, like I said, that video is probably the chicken, but we haven't gotten to. We're going to see freak off videos. They have rounded up some freak off videos, and
really.
yes, and so the way if you just went by today with him owning the fact that he has a temper and that he has had violence, I don't again, that doesn't excuse, but I think that they're trying to make it seem like well, these people were violent back and forth. They want to go back and say that this violence was back and forth. I think that what's interesting, if we go through what Cassie put in her lawsuit, what's going to be interesting to me is these executives, these people that worked for him,
Right.
bring her up when, when she would try to leave and do anything according to the lawsuits. We haven't heard anything about this in the trial yet, but they were saying that there were people that will call her and say, look, we're not going to put this single out if you don't call him. We're not going to do this if you don't do this. And we're not going to do all of this stuff. You're not going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to do this with your singles if you don't call him, if you don't get back in contact with him. And so I'm wondering if that is going to go under the coercion part of
Yeah,
this thing, because that's what it sounds like to me, that you were keeping her in line with her business of being a recording artist, but
right.
she had to do all of these things in order to do it. Now, I will tell you the part about transportation to engage in the prostitution part. I haven't. It is my understanding, and you let me know, that is based on them traveling over state lines, correct?
Yeah, they're making an argument, the trafficking, that when they shipped people over state lines, whether they were escorts or whatever, that that was trafficking. I think that ah, well, I think I mean if they've prosecuted that before and been successful, I guess I understand why they brought that. I just once again, I'd have to read the actual statute, but we're talking about voluntary behavior. These people were not kidnapped. They are, in fact, traveling because they want to travel. And so it would seem to me that trafficking would involve some sort of coercion, but I guess not because the charge is sitting up there.
Oh,
The
so we're
RICO,
talking about the I'm thinking that they were talking about the prostitutes. They were paying for them to travel. You're talking about that she traveled to them and then they did it specifically for the travel to go have the sex. Is that
I
what they were
thought that they were talking about the travel of, paying for people to go from point A to point B. I think they're defining that. I think the prosecution is defining that as trafficking.
doing? Got
So
you.
if I say to, if you say to person X, come to New York from California to do these things, they're defining that as trafficking. I think that's what I'm hearing. I'm not completely certain of that, but I think that's what they're trying to do. It's also interesting they're calling this a RICO case. Um, it's a RICO case only involving apparently one individual. Are they involving his staff as well? I mean, I was a
Yeah,
little
they're now I they haven't mentioned this in court, but from
okay,
what the lawsuit is saying, and if
right?
we particularly go back to the incident that happened in 2012, that she left. Let me go. That every like she was feeling, let me see, she ran away.
Yeah.
They had some kind of break. It says here she ran away to escape to get Kid Cudi's home. That he had his staff members to go over there and to blow up the car. They're
Huh.
also saying that when after this situation, that there's a situation that happened in 2015 where they're at an
Mhm.
after party and she's talking with somebody who's popular in the business, or a music manager. He didn't like that, and so he took her in the back room and he beat her. And then
Right.
they said that when she came out, she left and she went down to Miami. And when she went to Miami, I think she said that her parents took pictures of her. She went to Miami. She went to Miami hiding out. That there was a record executive that kept calling her saying, look, you need to call Mr. Combs. Hey, your album is not going to come out, or your single is not going to come
Oh,
out.
wow.
Your
Wow.
video is not going to come out until you give him a call. You need to give him a call. And then there
Wow.
was somebody, now this was supposed to have been from Bad Boy. Then it says something about someone from Sony. They didn't mention who, but it was a woman from Sony that called her and said, look, you need to call Mr. Combs. It's very important that you get back in contact with him. Your stuff is not going to come out. And
Right.
thirdly, the third person, which was interesting, was one of his attorneys called her and said that it would be in her best interest
Right.
to call back. So I think that that's where the racketeering part comes, because there was in her lawsuit, there was a couple of instances where that would happen. And they also talked about where he made up some type of event for her. He put out flyers and stuff like that, saying that
Right.
there was going to be an event that happened in Miami. And then, she's thinking that she's going there for work. And then I guess a freak off happened in one of the yachts or a hotel or something down there. So I'm wondering if those were the pieces that they're talking about in the racketeering situation.
Likely. That probably is it. And with the coercion with regard to being called and told that your album isn't going to come out, your videos are going to come out, that has shades of Harvey Weinstein in terms of the leverage that these guys put on these women to do things based on professional dealings and what is supposed to be professional dealings. And they're leveraging them and leveraging their careers based on sex or some other, thing that they
Right.
want. I mean, that is very familiar to the Weinstein scenario, and he's probably going to get hammered on that, rightfully so hammered on that.
Right.
If it's just as literal as your video or your album is not going to come out unless you do these things, it would be interesting to know if the person on the other end of the phone knew what they were involved in. They probably did, because I don't know how you're making that phone call and not having some sense that if you're saying to somebody their album's not going to come out unless you call him, what does that mean? Nobody's stupid. So
Right.
that is a
And that
crazy
is
scenario.
something to say. I mean,
Right,
to pull and to continue to and to continue to call. So once the guy from Bad Boy didn't make any trip, well, Ray, you had somebody that say from Sony call
right,
and
right,
was making hay. And then the big thing is now you've got his attorneys
right,
calling you. And so what reasonable person wouldn't believe that? Hey, you've
right,
got where am I going to go? I can't call my folks
right,
because
right.
I'm I can't move or can't go anything. And then also too there's of kidnapping from what I understand, because there's an incident where he beat her down in the car and she was so beat up so bad
Hmm.
that they placed her in a hotel for
Wow,
over a week and told her she
wow,
couldn't leave.
wow.
So all of that's supposed to, I believe, all of that again, all of this is being that I'm just talking about right now, it was pulled from her lawsuit that she settled.
Right,
So I'm quite sure that the prosecution is pulling that information, and they, because like you said, they have a almost near perfect track record, so they're going to be pulling all of this information and checking and going back in receipts, especially the. Let me see if I can find this person because they named him in this lawsuit.
yeah. Well, she if I think that her testimony, obviously, to do Captain Obvious, is going to be blockbuster once she starts talking about that type of stuff. I mean, you're talking about some slam dunk time here. I don't know how you're defending against that. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know what the defense is going to come up with. I mean, what are they going to say? That you, first of all, again, the video is sitting out there. He
Right.
might as well just throw himself on the mercy of the court on that one.
Right.
And then the idea that that you assaulted her so badly that she had to stay in a hotel room out of sight. You got to be kidding me. So I think
And
that
who treated her? Because
right,
from what they say, from because there's a makeup artist and hairstylist that I think is supposed to hit the stands to talk about how she looked at that
wow,
particular time, and
wow,
I am curious as to uh, I am quite sure, and I don't know. And let me just not say that I'm not quite sure because anything that I say, I'm just making statement. I don't know these folks. I don't know these folks for real. But it
mm,
would seem like that type of thing you would want to check to make sure because you were supposed to be, according to this information in this lawsuit, you were kicking her in her face, in her head.
right.
So I'm quite sure you're looking to make sure that when no bones broken or anything was going on with her face, who treated her?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, once again, the video is the video, but it's not just the video. What it shows is that you're capable of anything. You're
Right.
capable of any type of crazy ass violent behavior if you would do that. You ran down the hallway of a hotel with a towel on.
And
Uh,
colored socks.
Right, right. To beat somebody up who
Right.
has every right to leave and go wherever the heck they want, by the way, to state the obvious. And you did that. I mean, in what is effectively a public space in a way, anybody could have walked out at any moment and seen them. And
And saw that.
there's the expectation of cameras in most of these hotels. So that was one of the craziest things ever. And then he, of course, denied it. Remember that the story of it initially came out and he denied that it ever happened. Then he got busted. Then he had to do an apology video because you look crazy and you look a liar and because you are a liar. I mean, so it was just on so many levels hugely problematic. Hugely
Yeah.
problematic.
And here's the thing too. Uh they're gonna show these freak off videos. I don't,
Yeah.
you know, they're going to show these freak off videos, which is interesting to me. And I don't want to put cast any aspersion because, like you said, that there was a lot of men and there's a lot of older men.
Hmm.
And I'm wondering if these older men, I don't know if they put this in the voir dire part of it. Do they have children? Do they have girls, children, or anything like that? Or is that was the instance for that? Because again, if they're showing all these videos, and they also said in her lawsuit that he was threatened, basically revenge porn, that if you don't come back, I'm going to put these videos out and
Right.
everybody's going to see that you're doing all of these little different things. And
Right.
but anyway, but
Otherwise known as extortion.
mhm,
I think that if I would have to guess, I'll bet they'll have the TV in the courtroom facing the
the jury,
jury and the whoever's on the stand might see it, and the judge, and then the rest of the courtroom won't be able to see it, I suspect. So the back that's what they had with John Majors, and it wasn't anything explicit. It was just the way it was set up was for the jury to see in that courtroom, but if you were sitting in the seats, you couldn't see it. So I bet you that that's the way they're going to do it, particularly given the subject matter.
yeah.
I mean, I think you know, I always look at these things from a wide angle lens view, and I mean, it is a always a travesty when you have this type of situation where it meets every stereotype in the world, and it happens to be a black male on the stand. And
Right,
we're seeing these cases. We saw it with R. Kelly, we saw it with Bill Cosby, and now we're seeing it with this, where there is a certain level of oh, how what could I call it? I just think that the spectacle is so rooted in so many things historically in the United States, it cannot be coincidental. I also think it's not it shouldn't be. It should be noted that the entire prosecution team is white women. Now, I don't know why the media is hiding that because if
oh,
the
they didn't. I don't know if you heard earlier, Garrigo said it's a six pack of white women for the prosecution. He called them a six pack, and the judge had to admonish him for that.
Mhm.
So it's not lost on him, and it's not lost on there because when they talked about the strikes that they did, they were saying that they struck a lot of black folks off of their when they did those initial strikes. Like I said, that there are some black people that are on, but they struck off a lot of who the defense thought would be good jurors for their, and they were saying that they thought that they struck them off for because they were black.
Well, it was like 6 or 7 people, I think, right? It was a
Hmm.
pretty good number of people. Once again, shades of John Majors, the same thing happened. There was a Batson challenge for that. The judge in this case, Subramaniam, decided that oh, it's not a big deal that they were, you're striking all these jurors that just happen to be black. So I find that to be problematic. It is not a coincidence that they're striking jurors that are black. And if you remember in the Majors case, the one black juror, they tried to get rid of her. They tried to kick her off, because she was probably back there going, "Yeah, I don't think so," So they tried to get her off
Right.
the jury. At any rate, in this case, I do think that it might have been a good idea for the Southern District to find a black prosecutor, whether that be a woman or a man. And I find it interesting. ABC did a whole chart, and so did the Washington Post, of all the prosecutors. And it was kind of interesting. They had every single picture of the defense attorneys. Then they had the one picture of Miss Comey, who is the lead prosecutor, the daughter of James Comey, by the way. And then they didn't have any other photos of the prosecutors. And I thought, let me look these people up. And sure enough, it was 6 white women. So I just think if it was 6 white males or 6 black males or 6 black women, we would say that just as
Right.
we would say it's 6 white women. So it's an interesting situation.
Yeah, because initially, as I remember, when they were doing these indictments, the lead person at that time was a black male. I don't know what happened to him. So I don't.
disappeared to thin air. Yeah, it's probably one of his kids probably said, "Yeah, do you really want to get involved with that?" I don't know. I just think in the end, the evidence should win out, whatever the color of the prosecutors. But and the evidence I think is should be fairly vivid. You have enough people coming forward. It would be unusual, I think, if they lost. I'd be surprised if they lost. Although in the Weinstein case, they almost did lose. I mean, they lost some counts that I was like, wow, What's so complicating in these cases, and it was complicating in the Weinstein case as well, is when you have people who are having sexual relations with somebody that they later say is abusive, and they keep coming back to the person multiple times. And I know that a lot of folks in the sexual violence community say that that is prevalent. Prevalent though it may be, it's still a factor in the defense where the defense can say, well, wait a minute, if it was so terrible and so bad, then why did you come back 20 times? You see this in the Smokey Robinson case as well. You have somebody claiming that 20 times he sexually assaulted me. And I'm like, are you kidding? So that is a hard thing to get over, I think, um, for the prosecution in
Prosecution.
some of these cases, in some of these instances.
Right, right. So we've got that. I'm hoping to see the. I'm hoping to see them make the connections, because right now it's like you've got two separate instances. Because I thought when they put this the stripper on the
Mhm.
stand, I made the assumption wrongly that he was the person in the 2016 incident, but he wasn't. And so I'm still trying to figure out who as the young folks say, who got flued out. We hadn't figured out who got flued out to go wherever they. It's just that we're just now just hearing of the freaky stuff that you all do in your bedroom, but I'm not seeing at this point, just to be fair, who was transferred, because everything looks like it happened in the state of New York from what we hear from this
Right.
the stripper. So it's just happening in the city, the state and the city of New York. So I'm not hearing where somebody got on a plane to go somewhere to have thing. You know what's interesting to me? You remember his drug mule? There was a case with him and he was charged. Hadn't heard too much to him. You think he's going to testify?
Probably. You never know who will pop up. It really gets real when you put your hand on the Bible and you got to walk into the courtroom. Everything that happens on Instagram and social media and people talking and all that to me is completely meaningless until that moment when you start these trials and then
Right.
you really see the evidence. And so, who knows?
Right.
I would say it's likely though. For some reason, I just think it's likely.
And so for the human side of it, I was watching another blogger who was talking about this information, and they were talking about his family being there. And one of the things he said that struck him is that the all the daughters were there, and that the daughters and the sons, his youngest child's mother, one of his older children's mother was there, which is interesting because he has one son that has whose father is going to testify in the trial, which is going to be interesting. And that son is in there in the courtroom as well. But
Right.
the way the blogger was saying that was interesting is that the children were in there listening to this person talk about their father and all the stuff that he was getting along to, and at one point the daughters kind of walked out, and I was just like, you know what, this is a lot. I don't know if I'd want my kids to
Right.
be in that situation, because some of them are grown, and some, I think a couple of them just graduated from high school. This is their graduation year, and I don't know if I'd want them in my kids and my parents in there listening to how I get down in the bedroom, and to see them having to see that video of you being violent like that. So
Right. I think that you're right. I mean, I was surprised to see his entire fam there, because in person, this has got a totally different feel when you're listening to this type of subject matter about
right,
anybody that you may be related to, particularly one of your parents. I do think it's really, really difficult. But at the same time, I know they're trying to show support for their father. And
right,
how do you do that? Well, you do that by showing up physically, usually. I would have thought a jury selection day would not have contained what we found out today. Right? I mean, I was just like, oh, they're just going to be doing jury selection, and then that'll be it for the day, right? And it wasn't it for the day.
Yeah,
And
because they were supposed to finish jury selection Friday, and then
mm,
there were some issues that came up that they had to argue. They had to argue with the judge, and they did that. And then he just kind of said, "We'll just do the rest of the," because they had already gotten down to the 45. They just had to get down to the 12 plus the 6 alternates today, and they did that to me in a pretty quick time, because like I said, I was not I was only prepared to hear. I thought that the security guard was going to be on the stand for the rest of the day. They were going to get the information, but like I said, they were pretty quick with him. And it was just like I said, the person that's taking longer is the stripper. They're talking all this information about who paid who. And I think that they're harping on that. They're trying to say it was Cassie that paid. It wasn't Diddy that paid. It was Cassie that paid for all of these things. And
right,
Cassie was the one that paid. So she was a willing participant because she paid for that. She was the one getting on the computer, because I remember in Little Rod's lawsuit, he was saying that Diddy sent him out with a certain kind of hat on to go out and to find the people to come in. So I don't know. It was a lot of information, and like I said, it's going to be a lot of information tomorrow morning. And then they probably are going to show a video or two. And I'm wondering if these videos is what they pulled out from the raids.
yeah, it probably is. I mean, they raided an entire house, and we really haven't seen anything. We haven't heard really about anything other than bottles of oil and baby oil. I mean, we haven't heard anything about. We haven't seen anything.
Right.
So one would think if you took everybody's computer stuff, that something's got to be out there, right?
Right.
But one of the things, like I said, is going to be a struggle. I just think it is complex. It's complicated when you're dealing with adults, how you're going to define coercion, how you're going to define, forced and lack of consent with things that are repetitive. So it's one thing, if you have a one off incident, I think it would be very easy for the prosecution to define that. But when you're talking about, okay, yeah, well, we went back and forth 20 times, knowing full well where we were going, what we were doing, because we had done it so many times before,
Right.
defining the word coercion for the prosecution, I think is going to be a key element of this. I just think
Right.
it's going to be hard to do that when it's adults, of course. I mean, if this was underage, this is the R. Kelly case, and that's a completely different situation. But we're talking about grown adults, so um, that's getting interesting. But I do think the bar is getting lower with regard to degrees of consent, and if somebody coerced you or quote groomed you, now all of a sudden it can be defined as illegal. Some 30 years later. I mean, so it is a very interesting part of the law. And in New York, I don't think it's a coincidence that we're seeing in certain jurisdictions, New York and California being two of the most liberal, that they're doing. You're not seeing this in Texas,
No.
Georgia. I mean, or
Mm-mm.
Florida. You're not seeing this. Always
Yeah,
New
because
York.
I think in Georgia, if you bring on a civil suit or anything like that, the state gets like 50%, 40 or 50% of the monies
Oh
that
wow.
yeah. So there is not, when lawsuits are filed down there, lawsuit people are filing those lawsuits, because I think it's like you get like I think whatever, like if you get $1 million in punitive damage, you're only going to get 500,000, because the state is going to take uh the other. So they may not be filing in the state, maybe they're filing in federal court, but I know that in Georgia state court, they take half of whatever you're filing. So that's supposed to be a deterrent from all of the little frivolous lawsuits, as they said that they were
Right.
getting. But
Right.
like I said, New York is, like you said, New York and California has such a uh the bar is quite
Low.
fluffy.
Yeah, I mean, you saw in the civil case, in the Smokey Robinson case, there were a bunch of laws that came out of California that were listed off to the side as some of what he was being prosecuted for. And I went and researched all of them because and you had mentioned several on your video, and I thought, where did those come from? And most of them came from California,
Yeah, I think
and
there
they
was like a gender violence
right,
law, and
right, right.
there was another one too, because I hadn't heard them, and there was like there was these certain acts uh,
Right.
that define those different things that I was not familiar with. But that is, like you said, that's California state law, that they're having all of these little different things. And if you go back to all of the Shannon Sharp case, there are different things that he's being accused of. That I was like, oh, I didn't know they had these types of things going on. But again,
Right.
it's just one of these situations that, and I've said in that video, I've said it in any other videos. If you've got certain predilections, if you've got certain proclivities that you get engaged to, because it's not for me to say, but it always amazes me that you all have these proclivities and then they get out in public and then we say, oh, y'all are trying to persecute me. If you know that you have these type of proclivities, you need to take care of that. Now I'm old. So I
Mm.
remember that when you had these kind of proclivities, there were clubs and like you remember how like Playboy used to have the mansion and everything. There were
Right.
clubs that would go that you can get all these things done. That you didn't have to, you wouldn't just take on somebody and do this. There were clubs where you knew that there was a consent, and where you knew that there was stuff going on but anyway, I knew that there were places that you could go to get these things met, instead of now everybody is just running around here finding someone that they can do this. It's something serious. I don't know. And it
Well,
could be
Shannon,
just
all of these cases, of course, are slightly different, but the tie that is binding is the attorney, Tony Busby.
mm,
Um, and even though I do think that these cases are, every case has to be treated differently. There's no doubt about that. I mean, the Jay Z case is not the Sean Combs case. The Sean Combs case is not the Shannon Sharp case. The Deshaun Watson case is not, so we can go on. But it is interesting that you have one attorney who would appear to be very focused on very wealthy black men and very focused on who they're going out with and very focused on connecting with who that person is that they were going out with and then coming up with this, right? So obviously Shannon Sharp, I think of all the cases, that to me is I haven't heard all the evidence in Sean Combs yet, but to me the Shannon Sharp case is the stupidest one of the four. It's not hard to figure out with what we know and what he has said that he is not denied. Okay, I'm basing it just on that.
right.
And you're an idiot to be meeting people at that are 30 years your junior at a gym, and you're sitting around in one conversation talking about $100 million podcast contracts, and you're willing to put it all on the line for somebody who is effectively a child. Okay, she is overage, she is of age, but
Right.
she is a child. And so that is what you did. That is who you chose. That is who you put in your life and you decided to get involved with, and that is nobody else's fault but his. So I mean, that for me was absolutely ridiculous. And
And you were recorded saying
yeah, I mean, grow up. I mean, grow up. He's too old for this. I mean, it's some of these things, some of these stories, when people are really young, you can kind of say, well, okay, these are a set of really dumb decisions that you made in your 20s, maybe even in your 30s.
mm,
But and I also think too, you got to give a little bit of grace when people are on drugs, when they're under the influence of something that is out of their control in terms of not being able to get a handle of being addicted, let's say. You can kind of see through that a little bit, but Shannon Sharp is he's too old. He's in his 50s. He's not somebody that is a kid anymore. And so he's a smart guy. I mean, that's the other thing too. He's not a dummy. I mean, it's not just that he's smart about sports. He makes a lot of side comments that indicate to me that this is an intelligent person. And yet you get involved in this and you put your entire everything you've worked for, your career, your contracts, your money on the line for what? For somebody that like is just some person that I mean, I don't get that. I find that to be very stupid. So that to me is different than the behavior of, although not by much, I guess, the behavior of rock stars. I'm always surprised too with this. We've seen R. Kelly, and now we're seeing Sean Combs. We've heard for years with white rock and roll stars. I mean, some of whom went on tour for the express purpose of the groupies. Okay, that's 70s group in there, the Rolling Stones, a lot of these hair bands that we had in the 80s and 90s. And none of these people are getting adjudicated. Right? None of these people are getting into courtrooms. We're not hearing
Listen,
anything.
listen, uh, when you really sit back and you start listening, because you start listening to these people talk now, and they talk about the children that they had, and then you're like, okay, you were 60 and you what? I
Mhm.
mean, just even when you look at, for the things like the Elvises and the Roman Polanskis and the
Right.
what's his name? Mia
Roman Polanski.
Farrow's,
Oh yeah, Woody Allen.
Woody
Right.
Allen's and stuff
Right.
like that. And I mean, you've got Roman Polanski out here, was convicted and decided he hopped on a plane, and
Right.
nobody can figure out or go get him or do anything. And
Right.
he's making movies and being nominated for Oscars, and people are snidely saying, "Oh, I wonder, is he going to show up?" No, he's not going to show up.
Right.
I mean, he was convicted. He will go to jail. He's not going to show up. He's never coming back.
That's right.
But people, I guess the thing that bothers me in all of this with that type of thing, when you look at through that lens, is that people romanticize white men doing these types of things, and
Mhm.
then you demonize black men for doing these types of things, when everybody should be held accountable for the actions that they done to me in a fair thing. It's not better that they, because I cringe just a little bit when I hear people say, well, he did it with this. I don't want anybody to get away with it. I don't want anybody. If you know you've done something and you have to go to court, I just don't like these. If there's this one way that we romanticize people doing it this over here, and then we demonize them doing it over here, but it's the same degenerate behaviors, and we have to kind of figure out how we can get out of this mindset, because I think we forget about who we're fighting for, who we are, what we forget that, because of the fact that there is all these different nuances and layers of with race and all of these different things going through here. But like I said, you're right. These hair bands and things like that, and going out on the road, and and
Mhm.
half the people who are the groupies are anywhere between 15 and 22 years old, and they're in
Right.
places that, it's a whole lot of different things. And I think that that's just
Yeah.
the
I mean, there were songs. There've been several songs that have been written about underage women
girls,
that
yeah.
were out on the airwaves. Yeah. I also can't get over, even though I know it's a while ago now, the whole Jerry Lee Lewis scenario. He had two wives that came up dead mysteriously, and nobody really looked into that. And I'm thinking, like, what?
And
I,
weren't
I
they
just
under
think
15? Wasn't one of them under
one of
15?
them, the first one was a cousin under 50. That was like back in the 50s or 60s
Okay.
that happened. It did damage his career. So it wasn't like it just happened and nobody paid any attention, but he
Yeah.
was very young too at the time. So it was like a 19-year-old and 15-year-old. As I say, it was okay, but I'm saying it's two teenagers as opposed to the Shannon Sharp scenario where you have a 50 something and a 21-year-old, that. So I'm just saying that, but you're right. I mean, the double standard, and the fact that it always seems that these cases where we are discussing the sex lives of rock stars or musicians, it's not that, you say, well, because it's a rock star that makes it okay. No, it doesn't necessarily. I mean, again, what he did to Cassie Ventura at that hotel could never be okay for anybody, anytime, any place, whatever the profession. It's just so crazy and so violent and
Yeah.
so
And who thought,
unforgettable.
and I was even amazed that it was shown on television, because it was, when you saw somebody, when you there's this there are just certain acts for me that are just like, uh height of disrespect. and the first one is spitting on somebody.
Yeah, right,
You that is so disrespectful for you to be spitting on folks, and folks will lay you out for that.
right.
But to know that you are stomping on someone's face and
I know,
stomping on their
I know.
uh yeah, that
Right. I know.
mm,
That was one of the worst, one of the most craziest things ever seen. I mean, it was just so. I actually had a theory. Again, doesn't make it right. I'm just saying this just as a thought that was in my head, that the prosecution leaked it, because I do think that there's an open question about these cases with regard to pretrial publicity as to whether or not any of these people can actually get a fair trial. I can remember when, the Rodney King thing happened. There was a question about whether those cops could get a fair trial because of the pretrial publicity. Um, and they moved the case to Simi Valley. And I feel like with this type of situation where we've been sitting here for more than a year with certain information leaked out about Sean Combs, I do think that it is almost impossible for him to get a. I mean, who could reasonably say that they did not know anything about? I mean, you'd have to. I guess they found jurors that could say that, because that's typically one of the questions.
and
Did
I'm
you?
wondering, because you know what I'm thinking about, because like the thing about New York State is like New York City and then it's everywhere else. I think the only other city that I'm familiar with in New York is what, Albany and
Right,
Buffalo.
right,
So
right,
I'm wondering if those cities that are out west New York that they districts, and I don't know if they could have moved it over there or not. I'm not really sure, but
right,
um, you know,
right.
I'm
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I think there's so much to unpack there on the subject of black males. I just feel like there's an over indexing. I mean, it doesn't mean that I think that Sean Combs is innocent. I just think that we are seeing a lot of black males get prosecuted for things that no one can convince me that white male celebrities. I'm sure there's a lot of white male celebrities doing the same thing. And the question is, why aren't they getting prosecuted? Like, again, it's
well,
not a.
it's not even you know, just think about it. It's not even the celebrities. I'm just thinking about the average Joe Smo. I'm still thinking about this case, and I think it was in California, where this man took this woman behind a dumpster, and people came up and saw that he was
Mhm,
graping that person.
mhm,
And the judge said, I don't know if I'm mixing two cases or not, but I just remembered that this person didn't get any jail time, or the or he was or he was convicted, and probation was done. I can't remember the case, but even with the thing, because there was another case where the judge said, "Oh, I'm not going to do that because this is going to hurt your record. It's going to follow you," because he was going to, whoever this person was going to have to register as an offender. And we don't want to do that. We're not going to. And so you see it with average people. But yet, I remember the young man who was a football player, and the girl lied on him. It was public. He
mhm.
was convicted, and then turn around, she comes back and says, or they tape her saying that she knew it didn't happen, but she was going to get the money from the schools and all this other stuff. And so this particular person spent a few years in jail, and it was a big,
Right,
it was a big and a huge case like that. So yeah, I just think that whether you're a celebrity or not, uh if you have the complexion for protection, they're going to do whatever they need to do to protect that. It doesn't matter if you are, because look at the president. I mean, he's got
oh,
cases.
right,
He's been impeached. He's been
right,
all this other stuff, but he still continues to move forward. But had that been Barack Obama, I
right.
mean,
Oh,
they crucified him for wearing a gray suit. So
right,
you just think,
yeah. Trump is the ultimate example. There's no doubt about it. There
right?
is certainly a double standard there, and I do think when we see these prosecution teams of, I mean, all white women, there wasn't one. I mean, you don't have anyone. You don't have a Hispanic woman. You don't have an Asian woman. Like, all white women as the. I don't know. I just. suspicious of these patterns because they do coincide with a certain history, particularly in the South, although the North has not been innocent in this. But I'm just saying that it kind of reminds me of the thing that went down with the Central Park jogger and the Central Park Five, where you just there was just an assumption of their guilt before anyone actually investigated. And there's just sort of an automatic pilot when we talk about sexual violence. It wasn't that Tarana Burke it's just very a well-intentioned thing that a well-intentioned conversation that needed to happen is
Mhm.
what she started. And then, frankly, in my view, it got stolen from her by a bunch of Hollywood actresses that wanted to talk about their stuff in Hollywood. But her intention, I thought, was very good, which is to
Right.
have a conversation about something that nobody was having a conversation about.
And a safe space for you to have that
Right.
conversation.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that since then it's been kind of turned into something else that I don't think that she necessarily intended, which is part of that is in Tarana Burke's book. No relation, by the way. And I think understands that it kind of got co-opted a little bit.
Right.
But
And
as
it's
far as
hard because I've seen her on interviews, and it's hard for her to try to when she's talking about it, because again, that Me Too movement was so co-opt and turned into things, and I think about how now, even with certain things, because now everyone is talking about black fatigue, and they have switched it and turned it into white people are just so tired of hearing black people talk about racism, and that's not what black fatigue is. And it's the same thing with woke. Everybody is running around here talking about, oh, these people are so woke, they're so this, and the meaning that they're using that word for is not the way that that word was intended or it came out to. But it's always interesting to me how when things are co-opted, uh uh and is used in a manner that wasn't intended to in the first place. So
yeah, that's
mhm.
right. No, that's right. That's right. Okay, let me think. Anything else? Anything else? I mean, tomorrow's going to be pretty blockbuster. In fact, I actually think tomorrow could be the whole case. I think
Wow.
Cassie walking in there pregnant and then telling that story. And then I'm sure she's going to tell a bunch of things that we don't know anything about, you
Do
know.
you think her coming in, because I don't know, she looks like she's anywhere from 7 to 8 months already, 7 to 9 months.
Mhm.
Do you think that they're coming in telling her story while she's is with child? Do you think that that will have a big impact on the jury, or you just think it's just they're just gonna
Uh, I think it's bound to have an impact on the jury, but I do think that even without it, what she says is going to be it can't help but to be explosive in
yeah
my view. I mean, with what we already know, if she just stuck with what was talked about in the complaint, we do have to sort of, I guess, do a uh, say that just because it's in the complaint doesn't mean it's true. Because you really can write anything in a complaint because it is
correct
shielded from defamation. But he did settle it. You don't settle things for that much money, and it's all just a
right
bunch of lies. So there had to be a reason for that settlement. And again, with video and then her coming in, I mean, there could be a lot happening tomorrow. A lot.
Right. And like I said, as I was going through here and juxtaposing what they who the people, the witnesses were
Hmm.
versus what was in the thing, that you can kind of get that this is the playbook that they're using. They're pulling this information from this lawsuit, and they're putting it in because, like I said, this person that's on the stand right now, he is listed. He pretty much confirmed what was in here in regards to the 2012 incidents with the baby oil and being in New York and having the freak offs happening in New York, and how those things interplayed and everything like that. So I just I'm refreshing myself. I'm going back through this. It was about 35 pages. I'm going back through those 35 pages and highlighting. And like I said, once I read the information from the what is that? Who are they? The inside. I keep forgetting their
Hmm.
in-house press, inside press, whatever the name is. Shout
Yeah.
out to them.
Yeah.
And I've just been going back, and I'm like, oh, okay, so this is where they're getting this information, and these are the people who they're presenting to show that this information was correct. This is the information that happened, because like I said, they have the security guard from the Intercontinental in Los in Century City, and
Hmm.
then they have the stripper from the Gramercy Hotel incident, and he's talking, and it's pretty much lining up. So like I
Wow.
said, I'm interested to see what the defense has for the stripper tomorrow in regards to that. Are they going to pull out that who paid you? Every time you came out there, who paid you? Talk about what she did, what she said, they're probably going to pull out all the stuff that Cassie did, because from what from what they were talking about before they rested for the end of the day, he kept asking them question about, so you understand that prostitution is illegal, you understand that you worked for this, and or any of those things like that, because there was hold on, Lauren, and then I'll be through running my mouth.
That's
There
fine.
was a phrase
Hmm.
that they used that interested me. I was like, I've never heard this phrase, and it was witness number two.
Witness number two.
They talked about the baby oil, the bandana, the drugs, the freak offs, the beatings. But there was a phrase used, and I thought I had put it in my notes. But there was like a phrase used that the defense used to this person, and they'll probably get back to it. I'll just have to go back through my notes and look at it again. But there was a particular phrase they used in regards to trying to explain that it was Cassie paying you, and you understood that it was illegal. Everybody understood that that was illegal, and you willingly participated in
Hmm.
this illegal stuff. uh, uh because I know that there was an instance where the guy said that Puffy took a picture of his driver's license,
Hmm.
and when he tried to, I don't think he tried to step to Diddy, but he said, I felt like there was an incident that happened that he felt unsafe, and then he realized that Diddy had his information about where he lived, and so he didn't intervene like he I guess he said that he would have intervened, because he knew who Diddy was, and he was kind of afraid what would happen. And I'm quite sure the Kid Cudi car being blown up was infamous in New York in
Right.
2011 and 12. So
Right. I mean, I get it. Um, I'm a little less impressed by that reasoning when people are doing things over and over and over and over again. I'm just a little less impressed by that reasoning, but I get it. It is possible, certainly, that he could be dangerous. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He's got some stuff in his background that do indicate that. He's not exactly John Gotti, but he's not somebody that has nothing back there, right? So
right, and he was implicated or talked about in the
that's right.
Tupac
Tupac.
and Biggie stuff.
That's right.
So I
That
mean,
alone, that alone actually is
that
enough.
goes down in people,
Yeah.
like I said, there's that underground, that underbelly rumbling and stuff like that, and then there's that stuff that you can prove in the court of law, and people tend to uh believe more the underground rumblings that you can't really
Right.
prove.
That's
And
right.
so I don't know.
That's right. That's absolutely right. All right. What time is court tomorrow? Do we know? 10 o'clock, maybe?
I believe so, but I'm not doing my initials thing, because like I said, I don't want any dead space in my stuff. So my show won't start till after their lunch break. But I'm quite sure that with every they should be hitting the ground running at about eight or at least 9 o'clock in the
Yeah.
morning.
Yeah.
Get a couple of hours in, and then keep it moving. I predicted we'll probably see Cassie after lunch.
Yeah, I think tomorrow could be the whole case, actually. I think the whole case could actually be effectively decided tomorrow. Uh, it's hard to know when to go on, but I think what I'm going to do just in general is go on as late as possible with certain things, only because by the time you get to about 9:30, everything is done. They've been out of
Right.
court and I just sort of need time too to sort of look and see what happened and what I feel about it. That doesn't take that's until at least 9 o'clock right there,
Right.
because it's hard to do it. I'm impressed by the YouTubers out there who are doing it like almost like real time. Like they watch something, they're like on live, and then they're analyzing, 20 minutes
They're out
after.
there. And
Um,
there's quite a bit of, like I said, there's
mhm.
at least 2 or 3 YouTubers that I know that are in the courtroom. But
Yeah,
I'm just
sure.
I don't have it in me to stand outside at 2 o'clock in the morning waiting to go. I don't have that kind of I don't have that kind of thing into me. I mean, I would love to go, but I just I just can't, it's a big case and everybody is trying to clamor in.
Right,
I'm not sure if they have like overflow rooms or not, but if
right,
they had an overflow room where I can kind of see, or
right,
I don't even know, because see, I'm confused. The Supreme Court, you can hear the arguments. And
right.
I'm just like, why can't, I mean, okay, you don't want cameras in there. And I clearly understand that. But why can't we hear it? I don't
I
understand.
know, I know. Why can't we have audio? I
Why
know.
can't we
It
have
makes
the
no sense.
audio?
I
It
mean,
makes no sense.
we've got audio of the Supreme Court, so I don't know why we can't have audio of the New York federal courthouse. Like, it's not a terrorism case. Like a lot of times in Virginia, they'll have these terrorism cases, and like you
And that's
can't bring
understandable.
anything. Yeah, you can't do anything. You can't bring nothing in unless it's like a pen and a piece of paper. That's it. And but with this, it's like it's a celebrity. I know it's definitely not a frivolous case. It does
Right.
involve violence. It does involve, some very serious topics and crimes or alleged crimes. But at the end of the day, it is not a terrorism case. So I'm just like, why can't we hear it? And I got to tell you, I mean, I've learned this again and again and again. There is a big difference between reading about a court case and being in
Right.
the courtroom. There's just things that go on in that courtroom that are very hard to ignore. Looks across the room, where the
Right.
jury's looking, the judge's reaction, just so many things. And so being in the court, and the John Majors one was an absolutely crazy example of that.
Right. Well, you can look at the ASAP Rocky case, because we watched that ASAP Rocky case, and I mean, if someone would have just reported it coming out of there, we wouldn't have seen the little nuances, like you
Right,
said.
right,
Hearing ASAP Rocky breathe or say something under his breath,
right,
seeing the
right,
witnesses have conniptions on the stand, and
right,
see, you know, to see all those things. 'Cause like I said, even with listening, you can kind of hear
right,
how they're asking the questions, because like I said, reading the information and my eyes got big. I can only imagine hearing that information
oh
in
man,
that courtroom. And like I said, it would be for me. I mean, like I said, I'm okay with you saying, "Oh, I don't want you uh to show video," because
right,
the court illustrator, baby, I don't, every day they are showing me somebody different. Because if Diddy doesn't look like Chris Rock one day, he's looking
right,
like R. Kelly the other day, he was looking like
right,
all these different people, whoever's illustrating. I'm having a good kiki about that. But
right,
I really would love to just hear how they're saying it, hear
right,
the inflections in their
right,
voices,
right.
hear them say, ask the questions and how they're asking the questions, because it's hard to get kind of a gist about what's going on,
It is.
and
It is.
until that person comes on TV and says, "I was in the courtroom and this is what happened and this is what they
Right,
said and this is how they said it, and you should have heard the gas from the
right.
thing when people did this." And see, we don't have all of that, so
I
that's what.
know it's a killer because the thing about it is that it's not just what is going on in the courtroom. A lot of times, the hallway, people leaving, the staff of the prosecution team. I mean, we had a whole thing with the Majors case where I realized halfway through the thing that Alvin Bragg's staff were really the people who were the part of the entourage of Majors's ex-girlfriend Grace Jabari. I mean, it took me weeks to figure that out. Right? I mean, it took me weeks to figure that out. I was like, wait a minute, who are these extra women? Oh, it's Alvin Bragg's staff.
Wow.
There's just certain dynamics. And one good thing I will say though about the Sean Combs case is that there are several folks. Well, there's one in particular on X that is doing a really good job of just giving us the verbatim facts of what is being said, right? There's not a whole lot of, you know, opinionating or shading it or whatever. It's just telling the verbatim thing. That's really helpful. But you're right. I mean, I don't know why we can't do audio because the inflections are really important, the attitude, the whole thing. And when you're going through the filter of some of these reporters, that is a thing that is fraught with peril. I've been in situations where I was in the courtroom and then I went home and read what certain reporters had written, and it was like two completely different things. Like I was like, it was like another planet. I said, I'm glad that I was there, but it made me question. I'm like, wait, was I in the same court case? Was I in the same courtroom, or was this another court case? Like that
Yeah,
has
and see,
happened.
shout out to Inner City Press because, like I said,
Right.
he is just
I
giving you
see.
the information verbatim.
Right.
The grammatical errors and everything. He's just
Right.
giving us the information that was said instead of trying to. Because I was going through the New York Times, CNN, and Inner City Press, and it was
Right.
like he was giving that information in real time, and then I would hear. They would come back and they would gloss it up and make it,
Right.
thing, and so you
Right.
could read it and see, oh, that's what he meant. And see, that's why I was like, dog, we need the audio because now it makes, once they put their little flourishments and you have the information,
That's
oh,
right.
okay, that makes sense. But it's been making better sense in regards to going back and forth to the complaint that she filed back in 2023. Because like I said, she's so far, whoever did this, whoever wrote this up for her is the prosecution is really keeping to this, and the information is gelling coming out of there. So that's the only highlight I'm having, is that I have a document to go back and to refresh my mind, like, oh, okay, I remember this. So
Right. Inner
they
City Press is a dude named Matthew Russell. And Matthew Russell for as Inner City Press covers SDNY, the UN. Yeah, this guy, we gotta hope that he sticks in there and doesn't pull off on something else because
right.
you always have some person. And again with Majors, it was Danny Atherton. It
Mhm.
wasn't until Danny I saw what she was talking about, and I'm like, uh-oh, this is gonna be another one of these cases where you got 20 white reporters sitting up in there that are writing generally the same thing. I mean, I don't want to overgeneralize because AP was pretty good, and then there was a guy from Courthouse News that was pretty good on John Majors.
Mhm.
But you just get some fiction writing. You get pure fiction, right? They'll just leave stuff out. Like the worst is when some gigantic fact is left out of the reporting. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, and there's no way to know about it unless you have a
Right.
Danny Atherton in there. You don't know nothing.
Yeah, because like I said, when they were talking about, like I said, all that stuff was important that we needed to hear and have that information. But
Right.
then when you start talking about all the things that happened that night, and then to visually see someone running down the street,
Right.
and then oh, well, that stuff didn't matter. It's like,
I know, right? Okay, let's stop for a second. He's supposed to be dangerous and aggressive, but she's chasing him down the street. First of all, just the dynamic alone I had never seen before, where a guy is running from a woman that is claiming that he's abusive, and yet you saw none of that evidence in that scene. And of course the media tried to completely suppress that information, right? There's a real reluctance, and I understand it, from the activist domestic violence community. They do not want to stereotype women as nutty and slutty and crazy when that
right,
woman is making a claim of domestic violence. That is totally understood, because that was in fact the stereotype. That was the go-to from Bill Clinton and people who were trying to say that, this person's crazy and therefore. But the problem with this is you do get cases from time to time where the person is in fact crazy. I'm not necessarily talking about Grace Jabari as I say this.
right,
I'm just talking in general terms. Every now and then somebody's crazy, and it doesn't go just by gender, although we do understand that when we look at the statistics for domestic violence, certainly women are on the receiving end of violence most
right.
of the
And
time.
that's statistics. You can't even deny that, and you can't even, like I say all the time, you believe until you see some evidence that is showing you something different, and you question it. I
Right.
think one of the issues that I think that I have come across is that people uh don't want you to question things. If
Right.
you're questioning things, then you
Right.
don't believe something. No, I'm
Right.
asking a question because
Right.
if I'm someone who's advocating and it doesn't make sense to me, if it doesn't
Right.
make sense to me, then
Right.
that's an issue, a problem. And it doesn't have anything that, oh, well, you don't support people. It's not that.
Right.
I have seen that type of violence from both ends.
Right.
I've seen someone lie on somebody about violence, and I've
Right.
also seen someone inflict violence until
Right.
someone has been pruned from the timeline.
That's
So
right.
I've always been like, okay, I need to question. I need to question everything. I need an answer for certain questions, and there are going to be some questions that I'll never get any answers to. But I'm going to question it. I'm going to ask the question, and I'm not going to be the person that you're going to say, oh, well, you need to pick a side. No, I'm going to, I want the truth. I want to hear what's going on. I want
Yeah.
to,
It particularly is important, I think, in the Black community where we do have a specific history of Black men specifically being lied on, and in some cases, being the victim of extrajudicial violence, okay, in the form of lynching.
right,
And so, from a journalistic standpoint, there is absolutely no excuse for not questioning and not checking.
right,
And the thing that the Me Too movement did that I thought was particularly questionable was what you just referred to, which is any sort of questioning was met as you are a rape apologist and you are slut shaming if you dare to question anything. Now, once you get onto the level of not questioning anything, that means that the people who like to play games know I can get away with saying anything and nobody's going to question it. You're basically
mhm,
sending up a bat signal to liars, and there always
right,
are going to be liars in any population on any topic. And this is not to say that that's the majority, but all it takes is one to destroy somebody. So you got to be careful with that. And I'm shocked at the reluctance. Because, see, I mean, may she rest in peace, Virginia Giuffre, who accused Prince Andrew, who passed away recently.
hmm,
I always believed that woman primarily because she had no fear of questions. I mean, what I tend to find is that people who are not telling the truth always have a fear of questions, but
mm,
the ones that have no fear, usually what ends up happening is they're taking all comers. I don't care if you're asking me anything, I'll answer. I don't care. And I don't
right.
even care if you don't believe me. I'm boom, I'm saying it.
I'm gonna answer the
So
question. Yeah.
things like that. And it's just I don't know. You got to be really careful because there's a lot of money on the table when we're talking about billionaires. Sean Combs is a billionaire. And so I
Mm,
always have to I know that I've never been into Sean Combs. I always thought he moved weird and just I just never particularly liked Sean Combs, but I do understand whether I like him or not, he's a multi-billionaire. He's not just some guy walking down the street, and we're seeing a little pattern here lately of millionaires and billionaires, and particularly in the case of Jay-Z and Sean Combs, just happening to be accused of a bunch of stuff that is preceded by a demand letter asking for money. Uh,
right.
in the case of Jay Z, they're not even trying to get into a criminal case. It's just straight for the money, right?
I
So I'm
know.
like, that makes me extremely suspicious. I'm going to check that, and I am
Oh
going
yeah.
to.
And then the threats of outing you if
Right,
we don't do this. And
right.
then now we're in this situation where
That's right.
you're being charged,
That's
you're
right.
being sued for that. You put my name out there attached to something, and then you find it out you didn't even vet your client to the point where she's been, because I think I read the lawsuit that Jay-Z filed here in Alabama,
Right,
and he's basically saying that the initial law firm didn't even vet
right,
the situation, didn't even figure out, because again, I remember Blue and I were doing the thing, and then we started asking questions. Okay,
right,
the VMAs, because the
right,
things that she was talking about when she talked about, because my question was, I've been to New York City a couple of times, but I don't ever remember seeing where they have like mansions that are coming off the street. Now, granted, I'm not there when where the rich people, but I'm like,
right,
I've never known anybody in New York to say that they took them 20 minutes to get anywhere.
right, right. That's right. That's
I've never
absolutely
heard
right.
anybody say it takes them 20 minutes to get here. And then when you start, because all we did was what was it, Google Maps, and went down, and I was like, well, 20 minutes this way or five. We don't even see any of that going on. And then to talk about, because I was like, it's strange that because I was like, space is such a big thing. I remember saying space is such a big thing in New York. I don't see uh limousine drivers just sitting in front of the venue
Right. That's
and
right.
just sitting there, and they're just waiting for their fare to come back out. And I'm
That's
like, it looks like they would have gone someplace, even if it's to a parking deck or or they went back to their place and would come back when it was time. I just don't see
exactly
anybody just sitting there like that. And then
exactly
when they started talking about, because initially when they said, oh, well, her friend dropped her off, and I was thinking, well, where is this friend, and what kind of friend do you have that's going to drop you off to this thing? And with her being that age, I'm like, that means. And then my question was, most people in New York don't drive. They have good public transportation. They wouldn't drive downtown. They wouldn't drive there. And then to find out she lived 5.5 hours away, and then it's like, okay, that really doesn't make any sense. For her to make the show, she would have had to leave in the afternoon, and
right
she would have had to have not been in school that day.
right.
Somebody would have remembered that she was not in school at a certain time. So
That's right. No, it was a mess, and clearly there's a huge problem. Her own father really threw her under the bus, and it shouldn't happen. I mean, it should not happen that Jay Z is reported as raping a 13-year-old, and that news went around the world, and nobody verified it before it went around the world.
right,
And so it becomes, I mean, I've had people say to me, because I've worked for elected officials, well, we had to report it right then because it was elected official. Jay-Z is not an elected official. That didn't have to be reported right then. He doesn't have his hands on the nuclear codes. There was no reason that information needed to be published before it was checked and vetted. So it's all about the click rate. It's all about
right.
the ad clicking. I mean, that's all that is. And we find out that this woman is documentably batshit crazy. I mean, it wasn't even like ooh, wait a minute, we can't figure it out. This stuff is in documents.
Yeah, and they said that
So
she has lied before on some stuff.
right,
So I mean, no one did any vetting. It was like,
right,
ooh, she mentioned this person. And
right.
then you didn't even think about going through, was it provable that you could go all these places in the time that she said that you can do it? And
That's
it
right.
wasn't until the people, because like I said, it was the internet sleuth that were like, and I mean, didn't even
That's
take a
right.
day.
That's
That
right.
don't even make sense. And
Oh,
then you're supposed to be this hype, you were so hyped up of getting these
right.
numbers out, but look what's happened. You
Yep.
getting those numbers out, I'm quite sure this is how Shannon Sharp's person figured out that they could call. I wonder if I could call
Right.
them, and they would
That's
be
exactly
interested.
right. That's exactly right.
So,
That's exactly because that happened right after. I mean,
right.
that could not have been a coincidence. And by the way, I love the internet sleuths. I love them. I mean, they had photos of Jay Z at the party on the night of the award. I mean, they were better than the police. They had where
I
he
mean,
was and everything, and they basically exonerate him with facts and
right,
documentable. What I love about internet sleuths is they always bring like tangible evidence.
right,
It's
right,
always
right.
like audio or as photos or video. It's always something like that.
And it was so
And
I mean, I'm not trying to minimize, but I was just saying, it didn't take a private detective to have to
right,
go through. I mean, it was just provable stuff. You
right,
Google VMAs, and then you look, oh, it's on a Thursday. Well, if she's that age, she's supposed to be in school.
right,
Why is she in the
right,
school? Who was this friend that dropped? Oh, well, she lived in Buffalo.
right,
Now, oh, well, how far is that's five
right,
and a half hours. Her father, like I said, he would remember having to drive that far to pick her up.
right.
And because that's not a he may not remember, let's say, some particulars, but I would remember when my 13, 14, 15-year old was in this New York City on a Thursday, that had gone to the VMAs, that skipped school. I would remember having to have to drive, and that's a 10-hour drive going and coming back.
Exactly,
Remember having that thing, and then not having a conversation, because that's
exactly.
that's what that's what floored me. I was like, I don't care who that was. If your dad picked you up from the
Right.
thing and you don't think that you were going to hear his mouth for at least
I
3
know.
hours in that
I
drive,
know. I
I'm
know. I know.
sorry.
Come
I'm
on.
so sorry.
I
No.
know that it was completely ridiculous. And he what we found out in his case was he did lose some opportunities. He was damaged, financially, although I understand that that's all relative for him. He is a billionaire and I get that, but still, he should not have had to go through that. I mean, that
Yeah.
was ridiculous.
And it
So,
was sad because of the fact it came out right when his daughter was doing her
right,
Lion King thing, and
right.
it was kind of tainting that particular thing because people were
That's
like,
right.
why is he there? He shouldn't be there. That's his child. He's
That's right.
and then it was just like all the, so he made it so that he wasn't being seen, and he took
Right,
like one or two pictures, and then he scurried out of the way.
right.
But again, that shouldn't have happened to anybody, whether he was a
Right.
billionaire or not. But that
That's right.
shouldn't have happened to anybody without proper vetting. And like you said, here you are, you put it in a lawsuit back in October, and then you switch the thing out because you're threatening. Well, they said it was you.
Right.
Who was, they never did say who the woman that was supposed to have been there. They never mentioned who
Oh,
that
well,
person
I mean,
was.
what does Tony Busby care, right? You throw that
Yeah,
in there. Tony Busby has, by the way, a weird habit of doing that. Okay, well, ooh, there was another person there that was watching. I mean, give me a break, man. Either, first of all, I'm not a big fan of this Jane Doe thing unless somebody is a minor.
right,
Okay, whether they were a minor when this thing was alleged to have happened, or whether they're a minor now. In this particular case, they were a minor when it was alleged to have happened, but still, that you didn't have to Jane Doe the second person. So if there's a person there, then say who the heck the person is. What I've found is anytime someone goes unnamed is bullshit. That's what I found. Like I've had too many cases now where somebody says, like, I remember in the UVA rape case that happened where the whole thing was a complete lie. The woman whose name, her Jane Doe name was Jackie, alleges that an unknown dean was told X, Y, and Z. Well, just name the dean. I mean, why are we acting like you can't name the dean of the school? Like, so, and of
right,
course, the dean was later named, and then the dean sued and won $3 million on defamation. But the point is, anytime the person's not named, that's always a red flag. Because see, if somebody does something to you, you would just name the person.
right.
Why wouldn't you just name the person? Like, it was like, just name them. So that's always a big red flag. We start
Yeah.
getting into mysterious people who are standing there, but they have no name. This is wild. It's
I
wild.
thought what I thought was funny with that lawsuit that he's in with the Shannon Sharp in Nevada.
Hmm.
He made sure to let them know that he has applied to be able to what is it, pro hoc, I don't know if it's Vice or pro hoc vice. I don't know which one
Pro
it is.
hockey, yeah,
And
pro
so
hockey.
he made sure to put in there that it's been applied for, because again, you were so ready to get up there that you didn't even apply to apply to make sure that you could go to court and do all that. And I got so tickled. I was like, yeah, he was so burned in that Jay-Z and that those Diddy cases, because I don't think, yeah, I don't know if those other cases he had the same issue or not.
Hmm.
But I,
Unbelievable.
yeah.
All right. All right. Anything else?
No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm gonna watch the case. I mean, like I said, I'm gonna be reporting on it tomorrow, and I'll probably, like I said, I've got it scheduled to go after lunch, so that'll give enough time to be able to go over the morning stuff, and then
Right. After lunch. Okay, I'll be watching. Yeah, I'll be watching. Let me know. Well, let's see what happens tomorrow because
yeah,
I do think it's going to be a rolling firehouse of explosions with Cassie walking in there. I just think it's going to be the Cassie Ventura hour and day, and so
yeah, they're
she
going.
deserves her moment. I think. I mean, probably put up with a lot of nonsense that she shouldn't have, and
And
whether
just to think her career, I just look at
right,
the fact that, because
right,
the one song that I remember, I thought it was a decent song, and then you didn't really hear anything else because
right.
you get caught up in all that other stuff. But you're
That's right.
holding this career, and the career doesn't go, even though she had some acting things and all that other stuff. But uh and don't quote me. I don't know if her career was going to take off from that one little song, but we'll never know because of the fact that,
That's right. We'll never know. And it reminds me so much of the Weinstein thing. He had leveraged so many people like that and destroyed their careers. And they shouldn't have had to put up with that. They should not have had to deal with that. So that's crazy and it's not right. So, okay, Pam. Until next time, I'm going to try to get into the rhythm of doing this a lot more. So we'll see
yeah.
what happens. All right.
All right. All right.
Thanks a lot. Thanks everybody. We'll be back, and you will be back a lot quicker than I will be. So I'll be looking out for you tomorrow. Thanks a lot.
All right.